you know.
Yeah, but you can't tell. You can't tell. And you know, to be honest, when I look at the picture, your smile, your...
Introduce our second author, Justine Clement, was a city-based CEO turned forest bathing practitioner and conscious connected breath coach, who believes that in order to thrive, we need to reconnect with what and who we really are. Justine has always loved working with and managing teams of people and has a great admiration for innovation. She was the CEO for a groundbreaking £2 million backed startup that focused on experiential travel, working with global brands such as Unilever and PepsiCo. Later, she entered the world of another passion of hers, wellness, setting up well-being agency The Life Adventure, which works with UK government departments to set and improve the well-being agenda for government officials. She recently became a non-exec director for a community solar farm project in the south of England and crowdfunded a community project called the Selsey-Sea-Bathing Society to encourage people of all ages back into the sea. And over to both of you, Anu and Justine.
Hi, Justine. I've muted you, so you'll have to unmute yourself. Welcome, and thank you very much. I'm really honored to, have a conversation with you, and I'm really, really happy that your friends are here. This program is right now going live on the Facebook, as well as it's getting recorded right now. And so, Justine, I would like you to begin with this one introduction that Anja has given. And we always have an official introduction for ourselves and an introduction that we never talk about to other people. So could you really introduce yourself again as to what and who you really are? Thank you.
Yes, so I think when somebody asks you who you are, what you are, this has come up so many times, different festivals that I've been to. I remember sitting in a tent once, walked into a tent at a wellbeing festival, and we had to pair up with someone that I didn't know anyone there. And we had to spend 20 minutes looking into each other's eyes, just sitting very closely together and asking each other. I think we swapped 20 minutes one, 20 minutes the other. And we would swap over and we'd say to each other, who are you, or who really are you? And we'd just be looking into each other's eyes. And I've always found it a fascinating topic because I spend a lot of my time in the business world. And so if people ask you a similar question, you go into pretty much the introduction that Anja has given you. Well, I ran a really fascinating travel company that I loved, and I work in the well-being industry, but it's not really who you are, and it's what you do. But it's interesting, certainly here in the West, I think we define ourselves quite a lot by what we do. And for some people, when there isn't something specific, there's a thing for working mothers, for mothers, I think, where they sort of, it's a difficult conversation for some of them because they think, well, who am I? I'm just a mum. Well, gosh, you're just a mum. It's probably the greatest job in the world. But we do define ourselves by what we do quite often. So it's been quite a learning for me to come out of that and think about other ways to define myself. And so I would say that I'm sort of in line with my story, really, a curious and adventurous soul. I absolutely love and come alive when I'm with people, and particularly when I'm with people outside. When I'm inside, I'm okay if it's winter and it's cold, but generally I'm somebody who wants all the doors open, I don't like to feel trapped and confined. And I don't like to be on my own too much. Again, I've learnt over the last probably 7 years about enjoying my own company, and probably more specifically the last 4 years. I did a 2-year course which was called Spiritual Psychotherapy. It was all quite madly termed, and the course itself was actually called the School for Wizards. But I did a lot of sort of psychotherapy learning there, and it wasn't about wizardry at all. It was really psychotherapy, but understanding a bit more about myself. And I think historically I'd been someone who was always busy. My motto has always been, don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. And it's my biggest learning out of all the personal journeys I've been on, the developments, the learnings, the trainings. It always comes back to the same thing of learning to slow down and notice life around me. And it's not to say that I don't, but I just want to soak it all in, take it all up, and generally be running at 100 miles an hour. I mean, I remember when I was properly last working for someone, I'd literally run out the office, run to the tube station, get on the tube, run the other side. I'd always just be trying to squeeze too much in. So in a very long answer, I would say those are the key defining things about me: adventurous, curious, really love being with others, and someone who's learning to slow down and enjoy life at a bit of a slower pace than I historically have done. I hope that makes sense.
Of course it did. Of course it did. I mean, you spoke about being in a Harry Potter school, literally, and learning to find yourself then. I mean, come on. It's like an amazing journey that you've done so many things. And yet when I was reading your chapter again today, which I often do just before talking to the authors, and what came out was, very interestingly, I was looking at certain areas that I'd missed out on that day.
Yeah.
And you said to your dad asked you 15 years ago, where are you from?
Mm.
And you replied back to him. Could you just tell people, why was that such a difficult answer to give? Where are you from?
Yeah, because I was born in Wales, and most of my family, as I know them, are Welsh born. My mother is Welsh speaking, and I spoke Welsh up until probably 4 or 5. But on my mother's side, my maternal grandmother was illegitimate, which, you know, in those days was quite a horrific experience. And we don't really know her father's. My mother did realize that really her true, that would be her true grandfather was, so actually her true, who would that be? Actually, she realized that it would have been her half, would have been that her half brother, what's the line up? Her half uncle was actually still living in the village where she was. And so we don't really know too much about that lineage. And also my maternal grandfather was an orphan, so we don't know too much about him either. But regardless of that, when we were 3, my dad changed jobs and we moved to Cornwall, which are sort of similar in some ways. We call, in the UK, we call sort of Celtic traditions that we have in those 2 areas. Cornwall did have its own language at some point, which has been forgotten. Welsh was sort of going that way, actually. It was really being sort of run out by people speaking English, but there's been a bit of a reintroduction to that in Welsh schools. But we moved to Cornwall, and that's where I was brought up, and I love Cornwall. You know, people that are born in Wales and born in Cornwall are very passionate about where they come from. There's a real kind of sense of patriotism But the thing with the Cornish is it's maybe changing a little bit, but I'm not sure it is actually. It's opening up, but the Cornish very much kind of, are you Cornish or are you not? If you're Cornish, you're in with the gang. If you're not Cornish, you're not in with the gang. So I suppose maybe I always felt a little bit like I was outside of the gang because I wasn't born in Cornwall. And also spent a lot of time away from Wales. We used to go back and see so there's a 5-hour car drive, but we would go back and see both sets of grandparents, quite often go and spend a couple of weeks with them during the summer to give my parents a break. But that wasn't home either. So when my dad asked me where, I think I was saying to him that somebody had said to me, asked me where I was from. I was like, well, I don't really know. And that's always troubled me a bit. But I would just wonder actually if whenever I go somewhere new, I always find it fascinating. There's not many places that I don't go and think, oh, what would it be like to live here? And I just wonder if I'm that sort of person, really. I'm really grateful for the house that I live in Surrey in England. It's an old house. It was built in the 1860s, I think. And I love it, but I feel like a custodian of it. It's kind of not my house, because I always think at some point maybe something isn't forever. And I wonder if that's just a theme that runs through me, really. It's kind of wherever I lay my hat, but also there's this kind of yearning to have a belonging to somewhere. And there's an amazing author, actually. She's called Dr. Sharon Blackie. She's, I think she's British, but she has Irish sort of descendancy. And she talked about this topic a lot, because she was talking about, she was interviewing a guy who took his family on the road, and they just spent a couple of years, I think, traveling from one place to the next. And it was really a topic of belonging. Where do you really belong? And Sharon Blackie has a sort of slightly sort of shamanic look on life. She's moved around an awful lot, and she keeps thinking that where she's moved to next is going to be her final place. I think she's in her 60s now. And then she gets there, and then there's another reason to move. But actually, learning about that, it's about your connection to the land and to the earth where you are. And so I think it's been a fascinating topic for me, actually, is a sense of belonging and a yearning to be one thing or another, but actually realizing it doesn't really matter, because wherever you are, if you take the time to connect with the place that you're in, the land and the house and the people, then I think you can feel at home pretty much anywhere.
Wow, Justine. And when you were talking, it suddenly struck me. My sister used to stay in Surrey, and I've come and stayed in that place at least 4 times in past 10 years. And it feels that you're talking about home, because her place was almost like home. And I came a lot there to study in UK. And it just kind of feels like you're talking about something that I know.
Sure.
You've also mentioned beautifully that, it feels as if your connect with your mom is extremely strong, between the chutneys and the jams that you were creating with her and the baking that you were doing. But at some point, you also feel bad for her and for women in UK. For some reason, it came across very strongly that women weren't allowed to have their own bank account and stuff like that. How did this have an impact on you, and what did you create? I mean, I know that you created a lot, but it feels as if there is a close connection between how women need to be treated and how you look at things. So could you throw some light on that? Thank you.
Yeah. So my mum still talks about this now. I think she's got some of her own sort of self-development work to do, but she still talks about it now, still comes up. So I think my mum was probably a little bit like me, quite adventurous, and she was born in very little remote Welsh village, and I think she was born in 1942, so it was during the war. my grandfather, so her father, hadn't gone away to the war. I think because he had health issues, because he was an orphan and he ran a little cobblers, and so he hadn't gone away to the war, but she was an only child, and I think about 16, she wanted to go away and join, this is well after the war, obviously, join the Wrens, which is the Wrens or the RAFs, the Women's RAF or the Women's Navy, Royal Navy. And my grandmother, so her mother wouldn't let her. My grandmother was lovely, but she was a bit controlling. I think she was fearful. I think we've subsequently realised that she was riddled with rheumatoid arthritis, which wasn't really diagnosable back then. And also, this is the grandmother that had been illegitimate, so probably had her own things going on. So my mother wasn't able to leave home and do the adventurous things that she wanted to. And then she met my dad about 21. They're still happily married, but they were really naive back then. There was no sex education. It's really interesting looking at how now my friends are bringing up I don't have my own children, but they're bringing up their children. It's so much more open. But my mother recently said to me, she thought because they had no sex education at all, it was really a kind of right, you meet a husband, it's expected that you get married, and it's expected that you have children. And I remember her telling me not that long ago, because we never would talk about this kind of thing. Just that generation didn't really, that when you have sex, that you would become pregnant. That would mean that you would make a baby. And my mum and dad worked in the same firm. That's how they met, in an insurance company. And when two people get together, it's the woman that has to leave. Or it's certainly back then, sorry, I should be using the past tense. It was the woman that had to leave. So my mum left a job that actually she really loved. She really, really enjoyed it, and she had to leave. And then I don't really know the timescales, but then she did fall pregnant and she had my sister. And there's been some family discussions which keep coming up, which is that she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready for that child. I guess she was 22. And they had no money, and they were living in a little flat above my grandmother's. You know, there was no heating, no TV, no fridge. You know, it was very basic, and they had no real money. They were just starting out in life, really, at 21. Who does have any money? And my mum was putting, you know, coins into to save up for the money to put in for the meter, to the electricity, and I think she just found herself on this trajectory. And my dad would say, you know, that as soon as he came in from work, she would go, right, okay, there's the baby, because she'd be stuck in this little place, nowhere really to go, pushing a pram. And, you know, at 21 or 22, I mean, I just can't imagine that now. And I know that a lot of women do it, but she just wasn't ready for that. And I don't think she felt that she had a choice. By the time I came along, which was 5 years later, they had a little bit more money saved. They moved to Cornwall a few years after that. Things got easier, and she was a bit more ready then. But, you know, the impact that that's had on me is well, I wouldn't say it's an impact. That's the wrong way to start it. But I think I didn't take enough time to really understand what women have gone through in this country. And I know it's worse in a lot of countries. I know we're probably one of the better ones now, but you know, that they couldn't go and buy a house and have a mortgage, because they couldn't open their own bank account. And things have changed. You know, it's really late. Like, I'm sure there was a fantastic series in the UK not that long ago about the whole AIDS scene in Britain in the 80s, and obviously in America and other parts of the world. But I think it was, you know, illegal for two men to get together up until something like the 80s. I don't quote me on that, but it's really late that it was illegal for two men to get together. And it's like we take all this for granted. And I think there was a year that I didn't vote, and my dad reminded me what women had gone through in this country to get a vote. And I think we so quickly forget the past. And I've had this conversation with a friend of mine who does have She has one child, a daughter, but how long are you really remembered? Or how long are things remembered? You know, it's just, it's such a short time ago that women didn't have any independence or say or votes, and what I talk about in the book is my gratitude for that, in that I've really benefited from all the things that women specifically have done to push the agenda, and some terrible things that they've been through. You know, for my neighbor who's Italian calls it emancipation. I've not heard of that word for ages, because he can't quite, I don't think he can quite understand English women or British women, because I guess it's different again to Italy. So I just think the topic's fascinating, but really for me, what I wrote about in the book was my gratitude for everything that had gone before me, and also sadness for my mum, for my personal sort of heritage and lineage, for my mum and her not having the freedom maybe to do the things that I've been free to do. And that you know, brings up emotion in me now. It makes me feel sad to think about that. And it's the same for millions of women, I'm sure.
I'm in so much of gratitude right now that you've given the real picture, and this is so important when it's going in India, and people are going to keep seeing this on my Facebook, and all of you can share it if you want from my Facebook. I can give you the link. But what's really important is that there are people listening right now on the Facebook, and there is my friend Shona from Scotland, and you have Sabah Khan who's there, who's from a community which is even more guarded about women. I just feel that this topic touches everyone, how women have been treated. I would really encourage people over here, if they want to ask anything to Justin at this point, because it's about the women, and you cannot just talk about women without men being around. It's like you need to empower both and educate both to reach anywhere. So is there anybody who would like to ask her a question here? Or yeah, just go ahead. You can raise your hand, or you can just literally do this, and I can say, okay, fine, you can ask the question. Okay, no questions. Okay, let's go further. So I also see that you were in love with nature when you were very little, and are still in love with nature. And you have right now gotten to the wellness, and you're talking about, you know, the forest baths. For me, this is alien. Can you please tell people what is it that you've created, and what does that really mean? Because I was reading it and saying, oh, ouch, I don't know. And maybe I would love to experience that, but I don't know what that is. So could you please? Thank you.
Of course. So forest bathing is a translation from a Japanese word called Shinrin-yoku. And it is really fascinating. So in Japan in the 80s, so Japan is a very rural country, and they very quickly, I think a lot of it happened after the 50s, where they started to move into cities. And of course, Tokyo is now one of the most populated, I think it's the most populated city in the world. They had a very, in the scale of things, they had a very quick transition from being rural peoples to city peoples. And in the 80s, I think there was a lot of sickness, and there were a lot of issues with people's health. And so the Japanese government wanted to work out what to do about this. So they tasked their Ministry of Forestry and Agriculture and something, a ministerial department, to look into it. And a couple of men stepped forward, Dr. Ching-Li and another Dr. Miyazaki, and they did lots of scientifically backed experiments, taking city men from the city who worked in the city out into the woods for different durations, from 2 hours to, I think it was 5 days, and different durations. They wired them up, checked their blood pressure, checked how they would sleep, checked their cortisol levels, so their stress levels, and they conducted, and they're still doing it now, a huge amount of experiments to see the effect that nature has on our physiology. And these experiments are now they're becoming very well known outside of Japan now, particularly in America. There's a whole forest bathing institution there. It's beginning to get mentioned a lot more in the UK, and it's nothing to do with water. It's really about bathing in the atmosphere of the forest for well-being, is really a longer translation. And we as human beings have spent, if we've been around about 7 million years, we have spent 99.9% of our development in a natural and mostly wooded environment. And we have spent 0.01% in an urban environment. So what that means is we have developed, our bodies have developed in that environment and are at home and relaxed in that environment, except we've forgotten about it. And we moved, I mean, particularly talking about here in Britain, but we've moved further and further away from nature, and particularly since the Industrial Revolution. But sort of specifically 10,000 years ago, when we moved from being hunter-gatherers into agriculture. So that was the point that we started carving up the land and the fields and saying, right, this bit is mine, that bit's yours. And we started producing crops. And really, that's probably it. And religion also plays a part with that, I think. Certainly in Britain, when Christianity took hold, it wasn't so popular that people were pagans. Up until that point, people worshipped nature. They looked to nature for answers to their problems, to wisdom. And that didn't quite fit with Christianity, and having someone in a church who was the person that you go to for your problems. So I think it's a mixture of all those things that has led to our slow demise and our detachment from nature, and therefore from ourselves, because we are made up of the same things that the forest are. We're water, we're the air that we breathe, with the earth is, we're made of stardust, we're all these things that we forget that we are nature, and we talk about nature as being separate, when in fact it is what we are. So forest bathing is about taking people into the forest, into a wooded environment, slowing them down, because we're also living in a mega fast-paced way. I touched on that even for myself earlier. Slowing people down, which already takes a while to sort of slow down to the time and the pace of the forest. And then we introduce a series of, they're called invitations. So they're not exercises, because that sounds a bit sort of hard. They're invitations to try things out. And what we do, we've become a very visual species. So it's all about what we can see. So we try and isolate our senses. What can we hear? What can we touch? Getting back our sense of touch, our sense of smell in the forest, smelling the forest floors. It's a really, truly marvelous thing to try. And it's been marvelous for me, actually, in helping me slow down and have a reconnection to nature, because whilst you touched on it, I did grow up very much in nature. When I became a teenager, and then I moved to Italy for a few years, and I was living beside a lake then. So very much, I'm very much a water lover, but then came to London and spent 20 years in London, and really nature probably was in the background, actually. So it's been a reconnection for me, and forest bathing has helped me to do that, and also to reconnect to myself through those invitations and the training that I've done.
I'm like, I really want to try this.
Well, you're welcome. If you come over to Surrey again, I shall be inviting you out to the forest.
What's interesting, that in India we call Mother Earth. We say it's mother.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you're talking about it, it feels like you're reconnecting back to the love of your mom. And that itself can be extremely healing. You also talk a lot, Justine, about gratitude, and you get up in the morning with a gratitude, and you've said yes for everything in life, practically, in fact. I don't ever read. I mean, when I was reading through, it didn't say a no anywhere. It's like if there was an adventure, Justine was there. She was either running or connecting, and she was having a great time. Now, could you really take us through these two things that you really are so beautifully saying? One is gratitude, and one is saying yes. Just say yes. How can you guide people who are not in gratitude and who don't know how to say yes?
Yeah, I'm really interested through my work particularly, but just, as a person as well, is certainly in Britain, we've become detached from some of those words, like you say in India, using the mother. When you say something like Mother Earth to most people here, they'd be like, oh, yeah, she's a bit out there using some of those words. You sort of put her into a category of not sure, a bit, we're very judgmental. I mean, maybe because I live in London as well, or the surrounds of London, it's, but it's not so much. What I'm interested in is how you get these words and these phrases of doing things into what I would term the mainstream, so they don't switch people off. So you're changing the terminology to make it appealing to all. And gratitude has been one of those things that I think comes up in the kind of self-help kind of area. It's like, it comes up in the articles that some people would term a bit cheesy or a bit annoying. Is like, oh, gratitude, have a gratitude journal, or, it's kind of, that sort of raise your eyebrows kind of thing. But I think the tide's changing. I think the tide's changing with things like that. As mental health gets worse, people become more openly talking about their mental health issues. I think it's becoming a lot better. But gratitude was certainly in that category. But it's so powerful. I mean, it's literally like a tap of loveliness that you can turn on when you're feeling all sorts of things. Like Sunday, for example, there's no particular reason. I held a fantastic event on Saturday I run this community project called Selsey-Sea-Bathing. Selsey is a little place on the coast in England, and it's to encourage people back into the water. And it was amazing, but I had such a buzzy day because about 45 people came together. Some people came down from Surrey that normally swim in the Thames, and we were hosting them to show them the sea on the south coast of England. And there were lots of people around, and I've touched upon this already. I love being with people, and they were like-minded, really lovely. And Sunday, for some reason, I couldn't relax. What I wanted to do was sit down and read a book and relax and just take everything in. As I said, I touched upon this already. It's a struggle for me. But I was just fidgety. And I felt dissatisfied, and I thought, had a lovely view, and I was sitting reading my book, but I was itchy. I wanted to be. I thought about some of the people that had stayed on and were on the beach. I thought, I want to be with them, or I want to be in the sea, or I want to be doing this. And what I'm able to do now is notice these things, whereas before I would probably have continued with that. Now I stop myself, and I'm like, be grateful for what you've got. And it doesn't take much. It's just a reminder. It's a reminder of just saying to yourself, be grateful. And I think one of the biggest things that I've really learned and understood over the last few years is that it's such a gift to be given this life, this experience of being on this planet, living this life. We have awful days, we have awful situations, we have years of toughness, and you might be trapped in an awful marriage, you might be, the most awful things might have happened to you. So I'm not saying that it's always easy I'm talking about something very frivolous when I'm saying I'm sitting reading a book and I'm bringing in gratitude. I don't say that lightly. You may be in a really bad situation, but I do find that gratitude is really, really helpful. Just taking 5 minutes to be grateful for the things that you do have, because of course we always focus on the things that we don't have. It's a very simple switch. Some days it's easier than others. And I do know that, but it's hugely powerful, the gratitude. So that's the gratitude, and I can't remember what the other part of the question was. Can you?
You often say yes.
Oh, yes, the saying yes.
In fact, always. You said yes to anything that seemed exciting, adventurous, and you were there. You were there. You didn't think too much. Oh my God, I got to go to Italy. Should I not? Should I take this job? Should I not? You just went ahead and got your experiences and kept adding on. What was that about? It was so.
Yeah. And I always thought that, and I talk about this in my chapter, that I kind of went from one thing to the next without really having much thought. And I talk about the hummingbirds and the jackhammers towards the end. And that helped me make sense of things, because I always thought I didn't really have a plan. I ended up going to university. It wasn't a university at the time, Polytechnic. I only ended up going there because my dad said, shall I get you a place? Because my exam grades weren't brilliant. And he phoned me up when I was doing a few months in working in a children's camp in America when I was 18. And he phoned me up and said, look, I can get you a place at this Polytechnic. Would you like to go? And I was like, well, in the end, I said yes. I realized that he was making sense. So I feel like, I've kind of fallen into one thing to the next. The reason I ended up with this lovely job in this amazing travel company was because somebody found me and came and said, will you come and work with us? Do you know what I mean? I always thought maybe I've been really, I don't know if you know this word in English, cack-handed. Maybe I've been a bit cack-handed, that I've just kind of lurched from, I didn't lurch, but fall from one thing to the next. And things have popped up that I've said yes to. But I do wonder now whether actually I was a bit more intuitive than I thought, and maybe giving myself a bit more credit in that. Maybe when I said yes, somewhere inside, even though I didn't realize it, I did actually know that it was a good thing, because I've never really found myself in real danger. I've done some pretty risky, silly things sometimes in my 20s, and I've always come out of it without too many scrapes. I've broken various bits of my body for sure, but nothing really that's hugely endangered my life. But so I think, saying yes is all very well, but there does need to come a bit of intuition or common sense within that as well. I wouldn't just say yes to everything. And I don't know how you do that. I wasn't aware that I was touching into my intuition, but when I look back, as is really marvelous to do, and you look back and you join some of the dots, particularly when you get to my age, I'm 51 now, you can start to kind of look back and join some of the dots. And they say this in the startup world, you don't go from A to B, you have a vision, you don't go in a straight line from A to B, whatever your sort of goal is. It's sort of up and down and all over the place. It's quite sort of a typical thing you see on the internet when you look it up. And life is like that as well. And I'm really happy actually with the way that things have gone. And again, come back to grateful. I could have had a much harder life, I think, and I'm grateful for all the reasons for that. I think sometimes I definitely believe in reincarnation, that we have lots of lives. And I just think maybe this one's a bit of an easier one, but also maybe there's been a bit of guidance and a bit of intuition along the way. So I'm always cautious to say yes, but make sure you do some calculated risk taking as well. But don't be afraid and don't be fearful. The things that I find frustrating is when or whether other people say no because they're fearful of, maybe they're not confident, and I think, just don't worry about don't worry about not being good enough or being afraid. If it feels good, do it. And I think that's the key. If it feels good, do it. And that's another thing that I have learned is if it doesn't feel good, then probably don't say yes. If it feels good, then say yes. Don't let fear hold you back, or lack of confidence.
Wow. And in fact, maybe once you start doing things and say yes, it might just feel okay.
Yeah, exactly. Try somewhere. I mean, if you're someone that hasn't done that historically, try with the small things, the silly things. Just feel it. You can feel the resistance. And I've spoken about that in my chapter. There's plenty of resistance to those things I've said yes. I was terrified in various points of going off on different adventures. Who am I? Why am I doing this? You know, not very confident in myself, but for some reason I said yes anyway. So just start with small things that you would ordinarily say no to because you want to stay in your sort of safety net, and start small. And we're like you know, dogs really, in terms of you get a bit of a treat and then you grow in confidence. I don't know if that's the right analogy, but you know, the treat is that you've had a good time, or you've met someone, or you know, you could really start with just I walk down the street and I never say hello to anyone. I walk down the street with my head down, walk down the street and say hello to someone, go to the shops and see an old lady and ask her if she wants any help, or an old man, or do you know what I mean? Start small. If you're not used to it, start small, and then you'll grow in confidence, because the old lady or the person that you've said hello to will reward you with a lovely smile. They may not. Sometimes they might say, why is she saying hello to me? But you get the idea. You'll get the little rewards and then build on those, and catch yourself each time you go to say no for maybe the wrong reasons.
So my friend Sabah Khan is saying that's very, very true what you're saying, and she's really thankful for what you're saying. Let's go further. And you write in the book, in your chapter, boys came and went, a lot of them, but no one ever seemed quite right. Could you explain that? What was that about?
Yeah, I mean, I always had boyfriends. I started quite early having boyfriends at 14, really quite early. And yeah, and there were quite a lot of boys, but I was just never that bothered about them. Do you know what I mean? I think I always went for ones that appealed to me physically. That was probably not the right way to go. Probably didn't choose the right boys, but I just much preferred spending time with my friends. There was always someone there, but I wasn't that bothered. And I certainly wasn't bothered about having a long-term relationship. So yeah, that continued up until I was about, well, actually, yeah, about 28, 30, I should think. Yeah.
So you also mention in the book that when you spoke about your sexuality to your friends as well as to your family, they were very, very accepting, and they were very okay about it. And the only thing probably that your mom wasn't okay about it is, she might not have grandchildren. But it wasn't really about your sexuality. Could you really help me with this topic? Because this is something that's not easy even in my country for people to deal with.
Yeah.
I meet, and people think often that, if a girl is being with a boy, then she cannot have any other kind of sexuality. Just kind of explain a little bit about that, because that would really help people to free themselves. Thank you. I'm in deep gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed in this country a lot, really, in the last probably 10 years, but much more so in the last 5 years. So, but we're going back sort of 18 years in my life. And actually, I think no, my parents probably were bothered about it. I think they probably were a bit embarrassed to tell other people that their daughter was considering her sexuality. As I said in the book, I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as gay. I wouldn't like to put myself in a box particularly like that. I don't identify particularly as gay, and I really see it as a fluid thing, sexuality anyway. I mean, for some people, I see it as a bit of a scale, to be honest, and some people are really, really heterosexual Some people are really, really homosexual. And then some people are a bit along the way, and sometimes that changes throughout life as well. I mean, you hear of, there's a lot of cases I know of men getting married and then coming out as gay. I noticed that a lot more. And quite often the story is they've hidden their sexuality. But there's also plenty of instances where people have their sexuality has changed, and maybe it was a bit fluid and they've gone one way. But that's certainly my space is very much not to put people in boxes, because I think it's quite fluid. But certainly when I spoke to my parents about that 20 years ago, there's a lot more of a stigma, and there's shame, guilt, all those feelings around sexuality, and not really being, wanting to be obvious about your sexuality, walking down the street, holding hands, that sort of thing. And even now, to be honest, I still think twice. I think, am I going to offend these older people that are walking down the street if I walk with my partner down the street holding hands? And I suppose maybe that's just the pattern that we've got into, really. But it's definitely a lot more open in this country, but it's really not that long since it has been like that. So I would really say it's changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years, because it's much more in programs now. The regular TV programs you have, quite often there's two women together or two men together, and it's taken a long time to get to this point. But yeah, it certainly wasn't easy with my parents, and I think because I'm quite empathetic by nature, just naturally I tend to think about what other people are thinking. It's just the way that I am, and I always worried about them being embarrassed and ashamed of telling their friends. And of course there's the children part, which you touched upon. We could have had children, there's no reason not to have had children, and found a way to make that work. But not having grandchildren, because also my sister didn't have children for whatever reason. So yeah, it's not been easy, but certainly in terms of all my friends, very, very accepting. Never really experienced any problems really from anyone, to be honest. But as I said before in the book, is we don't sort of go out and flaunt it particularly either. I'm not somebody that needs to fly the flag and go on gay marches and that sort of thing. For whatever reason, it's just not been part of my life.
You're absolutely right. It's something that's very fluid. It's something that people should not be putting anybody in a box. I completely agree with you there, because sexuality is something that keeps moving and it's a dance of yourself with yourself.
Yes, that's lovely. Really, really beautiful way to describe it. In this generation now, so my friends that are having, children who are just in their teens now, it's hugely different already in this country. It's not really a thing. There's this whole gender thing going on now with not gender specific, and the world really is changing dramatically on that front. And it's really, it's really beautiful thing to watch. But the dance is, and just they're more allowed to just try things out and express themselves without fear of that shame and that guilt, which is really a lovely thing.
And to be really honest, I think your title of your chapter is Risk and Reward. It so beautifully weaves into every bit of whatever we think is a risk may not be a risk in many, many years later. And whatever we think is a reward may be something very differently that's going to get created many, many years.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you the last question, but before I go there, I would really ask each one of you on the platform if you have anything to ask Justine, because I just went on and on. So I just got caught in the emotion. Yes. Is there anybody, Astrid or Anja or anybody who would like to, Christine, you would like to ask for anything?
Justine, I'd just like to say thank you for your beautiful honesty and openness. But I also love your description of the forest bathing. So yes, I would very much want to be part of that one day. But again, I just want to go back to gratitude, because it's something that I do, but I also don't do, because I'm not sure how I'm, I'm more like say, oh, I've got to say gratitude. How do you do? Do you get up and say in the morning, oh, I'm grateful for everything, or do you have a gratitude journal? I found it quite hard having a gratitude journal, because it was actually putting almost too much structure into it for me. So how do you actually do your gratitude on the day?
Yeah, so I've done a bit of all of that, trial and error, experiment, things come and go. We've talked about fluidity and dances around that. You could apply that to gratitude as well. So I've definitely I studied a bit with a guy called Benjamin Hardy, who's in America, and it was very much around journal writing. And so before you go to bed, you write a little bit, and it's gratitude for the day. But, like everything, like you said about the structure, it's, you do it for a while and then you forget. And then my partner and I were doing that at the end of the day. So what have you been grateful for today? It's a lovely thing to do. I mean, it's so lovely. If we get into the routine of doing that every day, I think it's wonderful. What are you grateful for today? I'm always, I don't know where it's come from, but always grateful for having a bed to go to sleep in, and a house to sleep in, and a pillow and a duvet. I don't know where that's come from. Maybe, maybe in a previous life, I didn't have that security. I don't know, but it's really strong in me all the time. The minute that I get into bed, I'm like, I am so lucky, grateful to have a bed to get into. Anyway, that's a bit of a silly thing, but the at night, what have you been grateful for today is a great reminder, because if you've had a difficult day, it just pulls you back in, and that you go to sleep with something nice. You could do it in the morning as well. But I think the major thing that stays with me now is having done a bit more sort of psychology work and psychotherapy work, is that kind of noticing yourself as the third person. So when you start to go down that route of ungrateful or dissatisfaction or frustration, or is catching it, and then changing it, and I find that is the one that I use the most now, because it's coming naturally. Because when you've got to not force things, but when you've got to do the routines, like you're saying, and that obviously doesn't work very well for you, because otherwise you wouldn't have mentioned it. And I get that, the whole structure thing is doing some practice, in terms of catching your thoughts. And that's applicable to lots of things, isn't it? Catching your thoughts before you say something that you'll regret, before you go into a response on something that wouldn't be great. You apply it to everything. It's really about watching yourself in the third person, watching your thoughts and catching them before they get a little bit out of control with some of those negativities. I find then replacing it with gratitude as one of those is really the best way it works.
Justine, I also say every evening, thank you that I have a bed.
Oh, great.
And I have never found out there is no statue of the person who invented the bed. And I'm still looking for it, because I think it's the greatest invention we have had on Earth. And I also feel, gratitude a lot at the moment in COVID times. I have a beautiful flat. In some countries, my flat, 40 people would be living in, and I live here all by myself. And, the water is running, no problem. I have food to eat. Some of you know that I grew up in Ethiopia. They have huge famine problems now, no food to eat. And I always say thank you too, for all of that. And I have my ritual is like also having, I have lots of candles everywhere and incense sticks everywhere. I mean, they burn the whole day. And I do run out of the house sometimes, like you say, oh, did I turn off the iron? And for me, it is, did I blow out my candles? And I have left the house with burning candles. And so now I put a sticker on my door, you know, that I remember to check all my candles. But these are little things like that, you know, which really help you to be grateful when you listen to what's going on around you.
Yeah, exactly.
We take everything for granted, but it's not. And yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely.
Absolutely. And Sabha is saying, Justin, you're very bold and beautiful to raise awareness of life of women in the world. Thank you, Anu.
Thank
So
you.
that's for you. And I have a last question for you for today.
You already said you had the last one.
Oh, no, do that. You can't do this to me.
No, she didn't. She invited people in for a question, said she's got one more. So this is it.
Yeah, it's pandemic. People are dying. People are losing their fathers, their mothers, their children. People are losing their livelihood. They're losing practically everything that they had hoped. At this point, how can we together give them some hope with what should they do and what should they be having a gratitude? It's a difficult question. That's why I kept it to the last.
Oh, gosh, it really is. Yeah. Well, what's interesting is a really close friend of mine was just diagnosed with COVID a week ago today. And she talked about it because it was it was a bit of a shock for me. I mean, I have known a few people who've had COVID, and some quite badly, and have been thought that they were going to die. Actually, a couple of people, quite close friends. But for this particular friend, I speak to her most days. She's from Kerala, actually, but grew up here, and she's done a lot of work on herself as well. And you know, she hasn't been hospitalized. She's coming through it okay. But it's fascinating speaking to her because she talks of it as a gift, and she doesn't talk about that lightly. And she's done some work with a man who does sort of energy work and healing. She's taking homeopathic remedies. She's taking some of the vitamins that are suggested, D and selenium in this country, and vitamin C, particular doses. And she's talked about it as being a gift. And I think that's different if you've really got it really badly, and you're in a hospital bed, and you're in India, and there's so many people in the hospital. I can't begin to give any advice to anyone who's going through that or has lost anyone as yet. I haven't experienced that, so I'm not equipped to give an answer to that. All I can give a story of is my own experience of the people around me, and particularly this friend who is seeing the gifts in it, the gifts in that she is having it, that she's not died from it, or she's not been hospitalized from it. Bizarrely, she looks really well. I mean, she's not through it yet, but her husband said it's taken 10 years of you. I mean, it's a really strange discussion. Whereas I don't know if other people will see it like that. But I thought it was quite beautiful to hear how she was describing it, because if you get through it, there are things to take out of it. It's like, I have some close friends who are going through a cancer struggle. And because they've done some work on themselves, personal development, and got to know themselves a bit better, they talk about it as a gift, and that all life's difficulties are gifts. But I think, you know, it's easy for me to say who isn't lying on a hospital bed going through what some people are going through and have lost someone. So I talk from that basis only, and there are gifts to be found in really, really difficult situations. But yeah, I feel sort of almost too, I feel shy and a bit, as I said the word a few times, ill-equipped to really answer that question when I'm not going through what some people in this country, but particularly in your country, are going through. It's you know, I haven't experienced it, and all I can do is send love, and I think love is something that we haven't mentioned today, but giving each other all the love and support that we can give when people are going through it. Again, it's that thing of gratitude as well. It's one of the massive ones. The reason it's mentioned all the time is because it's one of the big ones. It's probably everything. And for anyone that we know going through that, whether directly or family or friends or lovers, whatever it is to show love and hope that sees them through.
Thank you, Justine. That was beautifully answered. I love the way you didn't search for an answer. You said truly what you felt. And I think in your honesty, in your authenticity, I get the answer that you are truly touched by people who are going through it. You're sending them a huge prayer that everybody stay okay where they are. And you also admit it's easier to say these things like saying gratitude when you are not in the situation. But I completely agree with you. I don't see any situation that doesn't leave you, touch you, and teach you. It always has rewards sitting at the end, though it's very difficult to see it that way.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
really grateful that you have you've said that, and Sabah is saying love is the joy of togetherness which lasts for a lifetime. And
very beautiful.
yes, absolutely. So I really thank you, and I would like Anja to conclude the session by saying goodbye. And I'm really, really grateful to all you women, and to Anja and to Christine and to Justine. And I don't know how to say your name, and that's why I'm avoiding it. Could you please tell me how to say your name?
It's Melody without the M, Elodie.
Elodie. Okay, thank you so much. I didn't want to make a mistake, and I'd rather be honest than say something. So thank you very, very much. And over to Anja. Anja, if we can say something before saying a goodbye. Thank you.
Justine, thank you very, very much
for
sharing and also giving us some tips and tricks, and to work on some rituals maybe. Anu, thank you for being who you are. Anu, I have known for 1.5 years. Also, Anu, I have never met personally, like all of you.
Amazing.
We are a Zoom community, but somehow we connected very fast, and our hearts are all in the good place where they should be.
Lovely.
Justine, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And I won't talk about the next one next week is another author.
Yes,
Thank you.
We will be meeting next Wednesday with Christine and there. And I want to say, you women are so beautiful, honest, and authentic. And that really touches me. I was sitting down and doing my homework like I've not done like this before. But it was good fun. It was really to go through it. And I said, I shouldn't miss out on that. And I shouldn't miss out on this. So there was a lot going on in my head. Let's keep in touch. And thank you so much for being yourself. Bye-bye.
Anu, thank you very much
you.
for the opportunity to chat to you. It's been lovely, really, really lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining.
Justine,
Thank you.
hi, lovely. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.